lectern.
Good morning, and welcome to Mount Vernon Unitarian Church. My name is Becky Brandt, and I'm a member of this congregation, and it is my pleasure to serve as Ebony's worship assistant today. As you may know, Ebony C. Peace is serving as our minister in residence this summer, and we are so lucky to have her. Ebony is a lay community minister and managing director of Sunstone Chapel, a ministry focusing on helping small congregations thrive. She's a certified senior professional in human resources, a clinical sociologist, adult Our Whole Lives sexuality education facilitator, and former special advisor to the board of the Unitarian Universalist Society of Community Ministries. As a part of her community ministry, she also serves as a facilitator for the District of Columbia Center for the LGBT Communities Job Club, vice president of the Association for Applied and Clinical Sociology, and as a part-time professor of sociology at Montgomery College in Maryland. Since winning the Charles Billings Prize for Excellence in Preaching, awarded by Meadville Lombard Theological School, Ebony has gone on an annual sermon tour while also supporting small congregations through faith-based organizational development so that they can increase their membership and thrive in their missions. A lifelong Unitarian Universalist from Maryland, she holds a BA in sociology, an MS in strategic human resources and organization development, and a Master of Arts in leadership studies from the Meadville Lombard Theological School. She completed her seminary internship at All Souls Church in Washington, D.C., where she focused on adult spiritual development, social justice, and worship arts. This summer at MVUC, Ebony will be preaching a series of 6 sermons. The first one was last Sunday. Check it out on YouTube if you weren't able to hear it already. And we're delighted that she's also agreed to lead 5 spiritual development workshops for our community this summer. You're all invited to participate in as many as you can. The workshops will be held online on Zoom. The first 2 of these workshops will be held this week, one on Tuesday night and one on Thursday night. The first one is entitled How to Pray, Rediscovering Prayer from a UU Perspective. Sounds very intriguing. I know I'll be there. I hope you will too. The Zoom link for all 5 workshops is on our MVUC website and will also be in the Windmill Weekly. So, whether you are a visitor exploring the possibilities of MVUC or a longtime member, know that you are welcome here, and we're so glad that you are here. Our church, as you know, is offering Sunday services both in person and virtually. So whether you're here in the chapel or at home, know that you are welcome. We gather virtually and in person to recommit ourselves to the mission of this church, to support one another in our spiritual journeys, to work for justice, to care for the earth, and build the common good. It is great to be together. Now, let us turn our hearts and minds to worship. We come now to the morning offering, where MVUC asks each of us to show our spiritual and material generosity. Each week we share the plate with a charitable organization. This week we are sharing the plate with Armitage House. Armitage House is a 24-hour emergency shelter for victims in danger of domestic and sexual violence, stalking, and human trafficking. And as a reminder, or an information, we ask our ushers to collect our offering early in the service to create a physical and emotional space for all to participate in our meditative candle lighting later in the service. I invite you to contribute whatever you're most comfortable with to Armitage House and to this church community. We are grateful for your donation. And now will the ushers please come forward. Our chalice lighting this morning is entitled A Symbol of Learning and Love by Elizabeth Harding. We, Unitarian Universalists, don't drink from our chalice. Instead, we use it to hold the flame. The circle of the chalice helps keep the fire small. The flame doesn't blind us. It doesn't burn us. It gives us light so we can see all the different things in the universe, even the invisible ones, because the Unitarian Universalist flame is a light of learning. The flaming chalice is a symbol of learning and of love. It's our symbol, the symbol of Unitarian Universalism. And now please rise as you're willing and able and join in the singing of hymn 1051 in our teal hymnal.
There are a lot of tricky repeats in this one, so just keep your eyes open.
Please remain standing and join in the reciting of our covenant, which is found in your order of service and in your hearts. Love is the teaching of this church. The quest of truth is its daily task, and service is its prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge and freedom, to serve life and community, to the end that all souls shall grow in our harmony. This is our covenant with each and with all. We come to our meditative hymn, which is number 123 in the gray hymnal, Spirit of Life.
Amen. And now, let's gather our hearts and minds in a spirit of prayer, meditation, or attentive stillness. During this quiet time, may our hearts open to love and healing. May our minds open to hope and possibility. As you are willing and able, you are invited to come up and light a candle as an expression of a special joy or sorrow. This is a ritual of holding space for each other and the mutual support of our community. Ours is a sharing community where our joys are amplified, a caring community where our sorrows are lessened.
And please join us now while we sing our children out to their RE classes.
Beautiful, thank you. Good morning. Good morning. Yes, we are together for the summer. I'm very excited to be here. 5 years ago, activist, author, and administrator of multiple philanthropic foundations, Tabitha King was offended, and rightly so. At the time, the Associated Press wrote an article about the large donation that she and her husband gave to New England Historic Genealogical Society. This large financial gift was originally her idea, yet the article referred to the two as Stephen King and his wife, Miss King. So now you know who Tabitha King is now, right? If you didn't already. So you've heard of Stephen King, the prolific writer, also called the King of Horror. His stories have been made into TV series and movies, and he's clearly accomplished, but so is Tabitha King. She has a name. The article could have and should have said her name. Instead of simply calling her Miss King, she's accomplished in her own right. She responded publicly and eventually received an apology. And why am I mentioning Tabitha King today? Well, I believe that if Annie Bizzell Jordan Willis were alive today, she might share a similar sentiment. When it comes to Annie's accomplishments and how she's identified and described in articles and websites, and even within UU-specific publications, Annie Bizzell Jordan Willis is almost always primarily referred to as the daughter of Reverend Joseph Fletcher Jordan, who is the third ordained African-American Universalist minister. So yes, her father made an enormous impact on his community and as a leader, and his daughter, Annie Bizzell Jordan Willis, served and led her community in her own right. She served children and their families as a teacher, and later at the age of 36 years old as a superintendent of the Suffolk Normal Training School, which this was later renamed the Jordan Neighborhood House. Okay? So Annie Bizzell Jordan Willis, that's a lot to chew, those 4 names, but Annie, we'll call her Annie, she was born 1893. Her legacy is one of extraordinary leadership in religious education curriculum, anti-racist pedagogy, and organizational leadership. Whereas most ministers were running congregations, Annie Bizzell Jordan Willis oversaw an unconventional ministry. This is a ministry of running a universalist school for children and youth. It wasn't just a Sunday school, it was an actual Monday through Friday universalist academic institution. Annie was an integrationist. The school provided an integrated mixed-race education, universalist values, and social services such as food, health, and childcare. Annie's father became a Universalist around the time that she was 7, so we could say that she was raised a Universalist. She took over leadership of this school after he died. And so can you imagine, and I try to imagine this, a Black woman whose grandparents had been enslaved now leading such an institution in that time? That's a really big deal, very unusual, and she was doing it. And as you can imagine, it wasn't always easy. This is in the South, the Jim Crow era. Black education institutions played a critical role in creating new African-American middle classes. Literacy for Blacks had increased over 40% during this time. And this was complex, where there were different generations that were living together. Some had been formerly enslaved and some were free, all mixing together. And lynching was still an epidemic. Society was formally and informally segregated. Southern states passed laws deliberately disenfranchising the Black vote. Poll taxes, literacy tests. Education was one of the only ways to get around these laws. An educated Black person could pass literacy tests. They could secure work that could help them own property and passed the required property tests. So this school that Annie led, it was formed before the Unitarian and Universalist merger. The Universalist Church of America at this time had supported Annie's father's ministry of the church and the school, because there was both. There was a church and the school together. And when her father died, the Universalists supported Annie. But what exactly do we mean by supported? Well, let's get into that. So the Universalist Church of America, they gave their approval, but there wasn't as much actual financial funding as we might think. The families of the students were still required to pay for their children to attend, albeit a nickel per child per week, which was a lot in that time for them. And the small amount of funding that the Universalists provided, it was never enough to fully support the school. But it was enough for them to use as leverage to pressure Annie into doing what they wanted with the school, not what Annie and the other leaders of the school felt that the students needed. In part due to the whole institution of Universalism at that time as a whole was struggling financially, they pressured Annie to shift the school's priority from education to providing social services and music lessons. Music lessons. I'll tell you more why I'm making that kind of gesture, because it surprised me as I read into this more. We'll talk about that. So from education to social services and music lessons. But we know how critical education was in this time period, for the empowerment and dignity of Black people. Social services are important, and they are short-term solutions to systemic racism and community health. In 1917, the Universalist General Convention gave their control of the school over to another entity. Some documentation that I've researched and looked into, it says that this other entity was the National Sunday School Association. And then another document says it's the Universalist Service Committee. Then another one said the Association of Universalist Women. So regardless, this change, this shifting of their control of this school to another organization, it actually ended up being pretty positive. The allies, in this case, were more compassionate, they were less oppressive, they supported Annie's leadership, and the interracial school thrived. When everything was said and done, about 8,000 to 10,000 students benefited from the school. Many of its graduates became highly regarded and influential. The school continued. It only continued, though, for about 7 years after Annie passed away. So why does all this matter? Why am I going into all of this about the history of the school and how power shifted from and away? Why does this matter now? Why does Annie and the Universalist school that she led, how can we benefit and understand, what can we learn from its rise and its fall? When I reflect on Annie's situation, her leadership and the school she devoted her life to, it reminds me of this saying that Black history is American history. The same is true with Unitarian, Universalist, and Unitarian Universalist history. Our Black UU ancestors have been a part of our denomination for a very, very long time. Even today, our faith tradition struggles to meet our vision of beloved community when it comes to people of color, especially when it comes to our Black members and Black leaders with whom we historically have had a challenge in being in right relationship with. One of the ways we can cultivate right relationship is through appropriate allyship. There's a wrong way and a right way, and to be an ally in a way that makes a positive difference, it means understanding our privilege and potential unconscious biases. And there's a quote from Brené Brown that comes to mind, and it says, "What separates privilege from entitlement is gratitude." How can we weave our gratitude for the service of our UU forebears from the past into transformation in the present? Being knowledgeable about stories such as Annie Bizzell Jordan Willis can help us understand and apply the context of our historical actions so we can do and be better in the present. This means speaking up for those with less privilege, not speaking over. It means letting those with less privilege lead in those matters that they are most impacted by. It means asking them what they need and helping them with what they've asked for. It does not mean giving them what you think they should have, regardless of their own opinion on the matter. My family, we went on a camping trip a couple of weeks ago. And I only went because I heard there would be a real toilet. Real toilet? Okay, I will come this time. We stopped at a gas station for some snacks and to stretch out our legs. My daughter, she's 11, with her compassionate heart, she asked me to buy some extra snacks for the homeless man who sat outside of the little gas station store with his 3-legged dog. I asked my daughter, "How do you know which snacks he wants? How do you know he's homeless?" She replied that he looked hungry and he looked homeless. She and I stepped out of the store and introduced ourselves to him. Come to find out, he was waiting for a ride for a friend. He didn't need or want any money or food. He thanked us for the conversation and recommended a special place up the river where we could check out during our camping trip. Once my daughter and I got back into the car, she was shocked about how incorrect her assumptions were, despite her heart being in the right place. In the case of the Universalist Church of America, they founded the Suffolk Normal Training School to provide an education for children unable to attend the segregated public schools. They had every intention of doing right by those they wished to uplift. Their heart was in the right place. However, when they shifted the direction of the school from an academic institution to health and social services and music lessons, what does this tell us? Perhaps that keeping the bodies of Black people healthy enough to work were more important than keeping their minds educated enough to be independent. Perhaps the music lessons meant it was acceptable for Black people to be entertainers, but none of the professional trades that required literacy and world knowledge. When the Universalist Church of America used their authority to speak over Annie, they removed her from her leadership position and required that she follow the orders of primarily male leadership in Boston, Massachusetts. They're telling her what to do, all the way over there, right? How can we go from having every intention of embracing beloved community and uplifting each other to falling flat on our allyship, to falling short of multiculturalism in our congregations, especially when it comes to leadership and power dynamics? A few generations later, after what happened with the school and Annie Bizzell Willis Jordan, after this, during the 1960s, 1970s, our denomination was grappling with how to respond and support civil rights marches and the oppression of Black people. As Unitarian Universalists, the whole situation was called the Black Empowerment Controversy. I encourage you to look that up if you have not heard about it. A conference was convened, and the Black Unitarian Universalist Caucus was formed. It was formed to help lead our faith tradition in being more responsive to these civil rights issues that were impacting the Black community. One of the reasons why this caucus was formed was because African American Unitarian Universalists felt that they were not given the lead on those decisions impacting them and those that looked like them. Again, this misplaced allyship behavior, this talking over those we seek to uplift instead of letting them lead on issues impacting them. Where was the trust, dignity, and respect that those impacted would know what they needed? This caucus formed the Black Affairs Council, and there was a call for Black representation in formal leadership roles within the UUA, funding for their council and subsidies for Black ministers. Long story short, the UUA denied their requests. And though they did approve some funding, it was mismanaged. Hayward Henry was the chair of the Black Unitarian Universalist Caucus at the time, and he's quoted as saying that the UUA's board, their refusal to fund the Black Affairs Council and their refusal to allow them to control what little funding they did get directly reflected, and I quote, a traditional, racist, and paternalistic approach to Black problems, end quote. Does this sound familiar to Annie's story? Paternalistic approach? Now, back to this era, right now, today. The UUA board has continued to engage in multicultural, anti-racist, and anti-oppressive work. The UUA has also created and shared numerous resources to help our larger UU community lean into this work. This work will help us to not repeat the mistakes of our past. For example, in 2017, the UUA voted to fund the Black Lives of Unitarian Universalism with over $5 million in long-term funds, in part to repair the right relations with Black UUs due to what happened way back during the Black empowerment controversy. Better late than never. It's never too late to do the right thing. It's never too late to do better, starting today. As a denomination and within our individual congregations, we are a work in progress. Our intentions are good, and good intentions are not enough. Our hearts are in the right place, and yet, what do our intentions look like in practice? What heart-based, spirit-led decisions can we make to lay and cultivate beloved community? Black people, people of color, so many different types of people are discovering Unitarian Universalism. And many continue to go just as fast as they come in because we don't treat them right. Because there's no one in leadership or diversity in the pulpits for many reasons. We're not perfect. We're all growing. And what I appreciate is that we are better at cultivating beloved community today than we were yesterday. In practice, what I appreciate is our Widening the Circle of Concern report. And if you haven't heard of that, please look that up as well. There's this Widening the Circle of Concern report. And it offers these practical recommendations and authentic truths within its pages. There's a full section of the report dedicated to restoration and reparations. And a quote directly from this report states, while Unitarian Universalism does have a history of resisting slavery and supporting the civil rights movement, it also has a history of institutional racism, support for cultural racism, and its own experience with religious oppression of Black people, as evidenced by the empowerment controversy. There's also a separate section in this Widening the Circle of Concern report on hospitality and inclusion that offers ideas for helping our faith communities nurture a sense of belonging, especially for historically marginalized people. Multicultural hospitality practices, intercultural competency training. Some of our UU sibling congregations have hired even part-time multicultural coordinators or diverse ministry staff to demonstrate commitment to inclusive hospitality and intercultural community engagement. One example I know is the First UU Church of Columbus. They have a part-time coordinator for their multicultural engagement ministry. And this is just one of the many examples of creative ways to be deliberate about co-creating our faith community, so it's the way we want it to be. It starts with decision-making, prioritization. It starts with open hearts, open minds, and yes, energy and money. I believe we can rarely go wrong when investing in our values and the call of our spirits. These important resources are important for strengthening our resolve, for being more confident in our anti-racism, allyship, and systemic change. Because anti-racism, allyship, and systemic change save lives, build relationships, foster beloved community during a time where much of the research points to a decline on organized religion, an increase toward secularization, and people not seeing church as the best place to build a safe and affirming community. Yet by leaning in to this holy work of love, justice, radical welcome, and self-reflection, we can and will transform our faith communities into these safe, holy places where everyone is cared for and where we also care for the larger world. May we be deliberately inclusive. And if we want more diverse people to feel welcome, we need to have more diverse people here. What comes first, the chicken or the egg? More diversity begets diversity. It compounds. But first, we must do the reaching out. And what excites me about Mount Vernon Unitarian Church is that we are already doing much of this work. And it's beautiful. If you've completed allyship training somewhere, this is a great time to review and refresh. If you have not participated in any type of allyship training, I invite you to find one. Do it, learn it, bring it back here at Mount Vernon Unitarian Church. Let's practice the heart of what it means when we say that love is at the center. So in closing, Annie Bizzell Jordan Willis knew the long-lasting power of an education. Though her teachers taught children, her teachers were learners themselves. Religious education matters. Education will always be power. And imagine how spiritual education can empower us to connect with the divine, our connection with ourselves, our faith, and the mission of this community. There are 5 adult religious education workshops coming up. That was mentioned earlier today from Becky. Sign up for these. Sign up for the summer reading. Sign up for the contemplative group. Don't miss these and other opportunities for spiritual development that have been created just for you. Sign online for the Lifespan Spiritual Growth email list. Faith formation helps us live into our values of transformation. It starts with ourselves. When we learn, we change. We are empowered to speak change into each other and our communities. Annie Bizzell Jordan, when she passed away, her last words were, "Watch out for my children." She was concerned about her students. She was concerned about the future. She was concerned about the next generation. Her concern was well placed because, as I shared earlier, her school only lasted 7 years after her death. A school, a community, a congregation should have leaders at all levels. A school should have financial gifts where our members can thrive into our mission, where we need these gifts to continue service. We need practical things like strategic plans so we can continue. We all must share the load so that when one of us steps down, there are still others holding up the fort. And one last thing. There's this beautiful Native American concept called the seventh generation principle. Have you heard it before? Yes, a couple folks, yes. It's a philosophy that in any decision we make today, that it should sustainably benefit 7 generations into the future. So that's the question. What decisions can we make about how we serve as allies today, and about how we engage and right relations today, about how we deepen our faith and learn about one another today, that benefit and sustain our community here at MVUC, our surrounding community, and our faith tradition for the at least 7 generations. How can we do this? Not just with our hearts, but without assumptions about what we think those we wish to uplift or serve need. These are steps toward living into our value of transformation, of adapting and learning and failing and trying again over and over again until we get it right. Because it's worth it. It's worth it for us and the generations to come. May it be so.
Singing of a hymn number 1054, Let This Be a House of Peace.
This one is not so familiar to us, so we'll take it slow. Let this be a house of peace, of nature and humanity, of sorrow and elation.
Please be seated. We have one very special announcement coming this morning that we're inserting at this time.
Hello. I don't know how many of you guys noticed, but our refrigerator in the kitchen there is kind of on its last legs. You've seen the puddle that comes out of the freezer when we can open it. So we started talking about trying to replace it, and Will has very generously offered to put up the first $600 towards that, which should be approximately 50% of what a new fridge should cost us. So he is putting it out as a challenge to the rest of the congregation to make up the rest of that. One for one, he gives it to me too. So we can do this. We have the little coffee hour like deposit box there. Any donations you can put in there, or we can set up something separate, whatever. But yeah, we can do it. We'll get a new one and we'll stop the ice puddles. It'll be great.
We do enjoy our coffee hours, and this is a significant part. Thank you, Will. Please join me as we say the words to extinguish our chalice. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.
The following words were written by Ken McCusick. To serve, to grow, and to love. In the name of all that is holy, may the connections between us inspire and sustain us. May the flame of life within us and among us be a sacred reminder that we are all called to serve, to grow, and to love as we continue this journey of transformation. Amen. Be well.